the year 2063, humans' bad treatment of the planet has raised the sea levels to the point where most of Earth is flooded now. Only 2 continents remain, and currently they're fighting a war over land and resources. In the middle of the sea between both continents, there's a military outpost known as the Sentinel with a crew of 4 soldiers that are starting to grow frustrated. After 2 years of service, their contract ended 3 months ago, yet the relief crew hasn't come to pick them up yet. Food is getting scarce, so during a very stormy night, Cassidy and Sullivan decide to try fishing. Surprisingly, they do well and fill their big net with plenty of catches. Meanwhile, their superior officer Hendricks notices the storm is getting too violent, so he asks Baines to secure the giant explosive that guards the Sentinel. At that point, the waves start developing huge and savage, influencing the station's pipelines. Baines hurries to fix them and stalls his hand out, causing him to battle submerged for a few minutes until he at last can free himself. Outside, the waves take the net away and the duo loses their bounty. Sullivan tries to grab something again, but the wind is getting too strong and dangerous, so he has to rush back inside before he's taken away too. Everyone makes it back just in time before the enormous wave hits the structure, causing it to shake and pushing water through every entrance, but the Sentinel is still standing when it's over. The next morning, the group discuss how to lower the consumption of their resources while having military rations for breakfast. Baines wonders what happened to the fish and gets angry when he hears they lost them, and Sullivan retaliates by insulting Baines for taking parts from his kitchen to repair the main pipes. An argument ensues and Hendricks reminds them to behave like adults, asking them to concentrate on the repairs. Baines wonders why they don't ask for the relief to hurry, but Hendricks reminds him the telegraph is to make reports only. Afterward, Sullivan does the daily report using the telegraph. He informs the base that there have been no events, and they reply there are no events there either, same as the last few months. At some point later, Sullivan joins Hendricks outside, and in the wake of poking some fun at their air artist, Sullivan checks out at the ocean with the optics. He's stunned to find a boat is drawing nearer, which Cassidy affirms when she really takes a look at the radar. Sullivan gets very happy because he assumes it's the relief, but Hendricks is wary and orders Baines to bring some weapons in case it's the enemy. Cassidy tries to contact the ship yet gets no answer, so Hendricks decides to give the ship a chance. He hands Sullivan a gun and tells him to take the boat to meet the ship and make sure there aren't any enemies to worry about. Sullivan immediately takes off and approaches the ship, calling out for any possible passengers, but there's still no answer. With his gun out and ready, Sullivan boards the ship and begins investigating, getting more and more upset when he notices the clues. Objects are covered with dirt, the radio isn't working, and there's untouched food in the cabinets. Hendricks tries to contact him for a status update, but Sullivan ignores him as he finds 4 bags destined for them. This had been their relief, but something happened to the crew and they disappeared, meaning they missed the chance to go home. Since Sullivan isn't answering, Hendricks accepts he was gone after, so he needs to shoot the boat before it draws near the Sentinel. He requests Cassidy for one from the keys to the Dangerous, and when she falters, he reminds her this is convention. Together with his own key, Hendricks starts activating the explosive, and before he shoots, he tries contacting Sullivan one last time. Thankfully, Sullivan does answer this time and the attack is cancelled. However, when Cassidy asks for her key back, Hendricks informs her he's keeping both as punishment for her hesitation in following orders. Afterward, Sullivan tows the ship over to the Sentinel. While Hendricks proceeds to investigate the ship, Sullivan reunites with Cassidy, and they spend a few moments getting frisky to make up for the scare they just went through. A few hours later, while they have a quick iodine bath, Baines informs the team of all the things he's managed to salvage from the ship. He's also sure this vast relief and that the engine hasn't worked in months. Sullivan wants to send a message to the base, but Hendricks forbids it until they get more information, since nothing about this makes sense even if it does count as an event. The crew is starting to get tired and wary of Hendricks' attitude, especially when they notice he has both keys now. After the shower, Hendricks actually looks at the boat's route history and records every one of the directions, which he returns to the Sentinel to apply them on a guide to follow their outing. In the meantime, Cassidy and Sullivan discuss what the world should resemble out there, since they haven't seen it in 2 years. Sullivan admits he sent a message behind Hendricks' back, so they'll have an answer tomorrow. The next morning, Hendricks finds his 3 soldiers suspiciously waiting next to the telegraph and Baines confesses the truth. Hendricks intends to scold them for it, but at that moment the machine receives an answer. The group gets excited until they read what it says. It's exactly the same message Sullivan sent last night. It's then that they finally realize they lost contact with the base a long time ago, and the computer has just been sending back the no events message Sullivan sends every day. While Hendricks continues to work with the coordinates on the map, Baines begins sneaking into the ship with a plan in mind. One night, Sullivan catches him coming back, but Baines refuses to explain himself. The duo ends up drinking together, and Baines shares some stories about the family that awaits him at home, if home is still around at all. Suddenly, Baines confesses he thinks he can fix the ship. Excited by the hope of escaping, Sullivan rushes to give Cassidy the news and asks her to leave with him to live together in one of the few safe towns that are left on the continent. But Cassidy's hesitant and won't believe what she's hearing. The following day, Sullivan slips into the boat with Baines to assist him with fixing the motor, and together they figure out how to complete the task. As soon as they come out, they find Hendricks waiting for them, and he orders them to take down the ship to use its parts to fix the Sentinel. He won't allow them to leave because he claims that staying here is their duty, regardless if their contract has ended. Sullivan refuses to die here like it happened to others in the past, and Baines agrees, but when Cassidy joins them, she doesn't show support for them. Not caring about their arguments, Hendricks sends the team to work on repairs, threatening them with his gun if they don't obey. The guys are furious and afraid Hendricks has been too trigger-happy lately, so Cassidy volunteers to talk to him next. Cassidy tells Hendricks she understands he feels after he lost his last squad, but going away doesn't equal dying. If anything, it's salvation. Meanwhile, Sullivan and Baines are starting to wonder if they'll have to fight their boss to get what they want. Their discussion is intruded on by Hendricks, who concedes Cassidy has introduced a decent contention since they don't have interchanges. Somebody ought to answer to the base. 2 individuals get to remain, and 2 others ought to go. Hendricks is obviously staying, and Cassidy has volunteered to stay here as well. Baines is happy with this development, but Sullivan is heartbroken. Moments later, Sullivan talks to Cassidy in private, trying to convince her to come as well, either by replacing Baines or disobeying Hendricks. He's so desperate to make her happy that he even offers to take her place or stay here with her, but Cassidy snaps and tells him she doesn't love him, she's only thought of him as a human necessity. A devastated Sullivan rushes out of the room, and Cassidy breaks down in tears. That night, Sullivan and Baines concentrate on packing. Hendricks gives Sullivan a letter to take to the base, and he comments on the fact that the enemy is exactly like them soldiers that just want to protect their homes. Sullivan reminds Hendricks they could all leave together, but Hendricks still refuses, saying someone needs to keep an eye on the explosive. Afterward, Hendricks goes to finish his work on the map and the coordinates, making a shocking discovery: the relief ship has steered away from the Sentinel on purpose, which makes no sense. Getting suspicious, Hendricks rushes to check on Cassidy, but he doesn't dare to say a word. The following morning, the group awakens hearing the alert obscuring on the grounds that one more boat has showed up on the radar. The men race to get on their situations to shield the Sentinel, and Cassidy attempts to reach out to the boat without much of any result. This time, Hendricks refuses to send anyone and orders the team to shoot, but their first bullet misses. While they're getting ready to reload, Cassidy notices their ship is missing at the same time Sullivan and Baines finally get to see it clearly once the fog clears out. They refuse to shoot again, but by the time Cassidy comes to warn them, it's too late. Hendricks has his gun out and hits Baines with it. It was Hendricks that put the ship back out last night, and to prove he's being serious, he shoots the air dancer. Baines still refuses to destroy the ship, and Hendricks responds by shooting his ear, so Sullivan takes the cannon and destroys the ship before they lose a life. A furious Baines tries to go after Hendricks, but Cassidy knocks him out first with a fire extinguisher. Afterward, Sullivan and Cassidy lock Hendricks up in the pantry, and Cassidy takes back both keys. A furious Baines later tries to find Hendricks to kill him and ends up hitting Sullivan when he tries to stop him. Cassidy quiets him down with words, yet Baines actually leaves to get smashed alone and unload his things, which makes him cry. In a little while, Cassidy specifies Hendricks needs his iodine shower, however Baines will not let him out and reports he stops. Sullivan tells Cassidy that they have no choice but to go through every single channel on the telegraph until they find one is working, and Cassidy takes the chance to confess she hadn't meant what she said about him. She had only wanted him to leave without having to worry about her, but Sullivan is hesitant to accept the excuse. Later in the afternoon, Sullivan takes some food to Hendricks and wonders why he changed his mind about leaving. Hendricks shares the information he got from the coordinates. The relief ship was here 3 months ago like it was supposed to, but something made it move away. This means there's a traitor among them that wants the explosive. Sullivan doesn't believe him and leaves, locking the door again. While Sullivan spends the rest of his day sending sauce messages to every channel, Baines keeps on drinking and tries to keep himself busy in his workshop, but he soon loses his mind and destroys everything he's built. Later in the evening, Cassidy shares with Sullivan a picture of her as a kid with her family, explaining they were killed by the enemy when she was still a child. The following morning, Baines finds Cassidy dozing in the comms room. As he rambles garbage about a missing future, he goes after Cassidy, causing it to appear as though he needs to exploit her. After some babble, Cassidy figures out how to drive him away, not understanding Baines has taken the keys. Then Cassidy goes looking for Sullivan to tell him what happened. But at that moment, Baines' voice can be heard through the speakers announcing that he'll activate the explosive. Sullivan and Cassidy rush back to the comms room and try to calm him down, mentioning his family as a reason to keep living. Baines cries as he steps away from the controls, but after Cassidy takes back the keys, Baines admits he just forgot the last digit of the activation code. Sullivan thinks it's time to let Hendricks out, but Baines has shocking news: he tried to kill him earlier, but when he entered the pantry, Hendricks was gone. An open window indicated he had ended things for himself. When Cassidy and Sullivan check the pantry, they're devastated to see Baines said the truth. Not being able to deal with his grief, Sullivan reads the letter Hendricks had written to the base, and he's shocked to see Hendricks had requested for his command to be extended. A while later, Cassidy shows the now spotless studio to Sullivan to demonstrate Baines is feeling far improved and is fabricating once more. Baines admits his significant other had been pregnant and he never got to meet the child, which makes Sullivan effectively excuse him for the alcoholic eruption. Baines shows his gratitude with a hug before getting on the boat to go back to salvaging stuff from the sea. Cassidy is going with him, so Sullivan gives her a gun just in case, and Cassidy thanks him with a kiss. Moments later, Sullivan decides to try fishing again, and when he pulls up the net, he discovers Hendricks' body with a wound on his head, meaning someone killed him and there truly is a traitor with them. While Sullivan runs to check on his friends' profiles for clues, Cassidy stares at Baines in the boat, putting together a plan. Next, Sullivan checks on Hendricks' map, coming up with a theory. As a storm begins brewing, Sullivan checks the beacon outside and confirms it can be taken off and moved around. This means someone took the beacon away in the boat and made the ship follow them instead of going to the Sentinel, explaining the coordinates, then that someone killed the relief team and let the ship float away. A few hours later, only Cassidy comes back from the little trip saying that Baines accidentally fell and died while trying to grab some plastic. Sullivan immediately guesses she killed him and she was the traitor all along. However, he's too scared to say anything yet. The following morning, Cassidy awakens alone in bed. Sullivan converses with her just through the walkie-talkie, making sense of he realizes she killed everybody and that she's spying for the adversary. However, he won't allow her to have the unstable. Cassidy then realizes she's missing the keys and runs to the comms room, where she finds Sullivan in the middle of activating the explosive. Since they have no future, he doesn't mind blowing the Sentinel up with them still inside. With Sullivan holding her at gunpoint, Cassidy tries to explain people in her homeland are suffering and she hated lying to him, but Sullivan doesn't believe her and activates the explosive. However, instead of exploding, the machine displays a funny little phrase that Baines liked to repeat, which makes them realize Baines reprogrammed the explosive so nobody can use it for destruction. In the end, Sullivan and Cassidy have a little talk. They agree that no matter what side of the war comes, they'll protect the Sentinel together and keep on surviving. Thanks for watching video.